Good morning, beloved, and welcome to Beacon Unitarian Universalist Congregation. I am Reverend Dr. Robin Tanner, she, her, a member of your lead ministry team here at Beacon, and my words are coming to you live from our sanctuary at 4 Waldron in Summit, New Jersey, where there is just a little bit of snow coming down, the delightful, fluffy kind. I invite you to take a moment and tell us where you're joining us from. Share your name, your pronouns, and let us know what spark of light you're bringing from where you are in the world. On this day, just before Valentine's Day, we are celebrating the gift of being human, including human sexuality. Now, this is a Sunday that can cause some degree of discomfort. It's a tradition we began about 5 years ago, not the annual Sunday of discomfort, of course, but this annual Sunday, which we affectionately call Sex Sunday. At least some of you are going to be able to join us from the safety of your home. Unitarian Universalism, in all seriousness, honors sexuality as a gift of being human. We affirm self-worth, sexual health, responsibility, justice, and inclusivity. Indeed, it is a matter of our whole lives. So welcome, beloved. Cisgender, non-binary, transgender, and queer, monogamous, polyamorous, lesbian, heterosexual, gay, bisexual, asexual, identities still emerging and unfolding. We see the beauty in your story and know that it is through affirming the strength, the diversity, and the beauty in our stories and knowing our histories that we shine together as a beacon. We are also in the month of Black History, but truly, aren't we always in the year of Black History when we should be telling these stories? And on this annual Sex Sunday, I want to honor Dr. Joyce Lynn Elders, the first African-American woman to be U.S. Surgeon General, who advocated long before anyone was having these conversations publicly, advocated for contraception in schools, and saw that human sexuality was part of being a healthy human and spoke openly and freely about this. We celebrate and honor those who have shown a light before us, that we would continue to be able to find our collective path to wholeness. We kindle the light of our faith now, this chalice, for the words and deeds that kindle the way of the path still. We honor their lives and the holiness within humanity this day as revolution and revelation continue. We turn now to the wisdom in a Maya tale about discomfort.
Eek! I don't want to talk about it, by Tuli Patel. Maya's moms, Shanice and Paula, had had an exhausting weekend. Shanice had been in a 3-day anti-racism training, and Paula was exhausted running the house and playing games and reading with Maya. She needed some time to herself, like a long soak in a hot bath. Well, said Shanice, why don't you go by yourself to the owl orientation at church? What? Exclaimed Paula. Not only have I had a rough weekend, but now you want me to go and listen to things about sex? You know that I would much rather not. These are private things. Shanice let it slide for the moment. That night, after Maya had been read her last bedtime book and had her final drink of water as they were getting ready for bed, Shanice said to Paula, I think being uncomfortable, as I am sure you will be at owl orientation, is the first step to creating a common language for engagement. You've been doing too much anti-racism training, said Paula, snapping off the light and yanking over more than her share of the comforter. Shanice let it slide for the moment. Next morning, as they were getting ready to go to church, Shanice tried one last time. So we go every Sunday so that we can spend some time exercising our spiritual muscle, right? Just like doing our workouts, we dedicate some time to our inner lives. I wonder if we can dedicate some time to our discomfort. And what's going to be shocking about engaging with our most basic human needs to love and be loved? Silence. That night, Paula went to the owl orientation. She was surprised to find herself having a good time as she met other parents, some of whom were more prudish than she was. She had not imagined such a thing to be possible. And they slowly started talking and came to understand that sexuality encompasses all aspects of humanness, from how we dress to who we choose to love, from understanding anatomy and physiology to our relationships with friends. And soon, in Maya's family, there emerged the first steps towards engaging discomfort as Maya, Shanice, and Paula discovered a common language for talking about a sacred aspect of humanness. Here ends our story for all ages.
Good morning, Beacon. Rev Emilie here as your chaplain. Each week at Beacon, we endeavor to bring the fullness of life into our services, both joy and sorrow. And today we do this together. Begin by putting your hand on your heart. I invite you from home to really do this. Put your hand on your heart and feel the beating of it. What struggle, what sorrow is in your heart this day? Perhaps you are thinking of a person or a place, maybe a community that is struggling right now. Maybe you are carrying your own. Wherever you are, feel our collective presence with you. Today, we light a candle for Beacon member Jillian Aldrich, who slipped on the ice and broke her ankle. We light a candle for our intern, Nicole Jacobson, and her husband, Tarek, and their family. Tarek had 2 surgeries this week on his heart, and we pray for his recovery and for Nicole and their children. We light a candle, a memorial candle today for Joan Borneman, Beacon member who died on Tuesday, February 8th. For many of us, she was the first person that we met when we entered Beacon, when she was an usher, greeting us with delight and joy, so happy to get to know us. We will miss her greatly. We light a candle this morning for Jean Pupke, the senior minister of the UU congregation in Richmond, Virginia, who died suddenly this week, unexpectedly. Jean believed in showing up in major ways for Unitarian Universalists and other people of other faith traditions. And consequently, Richmond was Beacon's mentor congregation. She showed up for us. In fact, it was her congregation who trained our chaplains. Jean was planning to retire in June, and we are now holding her wife, Regina, and the Richmond congregation in our prayers as they face very different futures. We also light candles this morning for the ministers, the staff, the board members, and everyone who knew and loved her strong presence. We light a candle this morning for Amir Locke and his family, his community, after he was fatally shot by the police in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There is so much struggle, so much sorrow in our hearts this week, beloved. Take a moment to lift up in the chat today the names of the people and the places where you are lighting, where you want to light a candle. In the chat, take another moment to tend to our shared community, acknowledging one another's struggles, and with each candle lit, with each name lifted up in the chat, may each one of us know that we are held in the care and the comfort of this community. At the same time that there is struggle, there is joy. It seems odd, but it's there. Perhaps this morning you have discovered a new interest, a new hobby, a new place that is bringing you peace and renewal. Perhaps there has been or shortly will be a wedding, a graduation, a birth, a new job, a new home, an engagement, something that you are looking forward to celebrating. This day, we can celebrate that the COVID numbers have come down enough that we can gather people in person here in our sanctuary. We can celebrate that Beacon is kicking off its postcard campaign for the midterm elections. We can celebrate that Summit Warm Hearts has continued to operate through the COVID crisis. We celebrate that despite a world filled with uncertainty and divisiveness, there are us who believe in showing compassion for and helping all of us, those of us suffering and those of us who believe in fighting for justice. There is joy here too, beloved, and we light a candle for that. For all of these gifts, we give thanks.
Good morning, Beacon. My name is Diana Kaiser, and I'm a member of Beacon as well as on the Summit Interfaith Council's Anti-Racism Committee, or ARC, which is the beneficiary of our offering this morning. ARC is a group of 14 standing members from the various houses of worship in Summit. We meet monthly to plan activities and programs that will increase awareness of racial bias and inequity, both historically.
Intentions and prayers as the sorrows and joy flows through the chat now. Indeed, as those sorrows and joys and intentions, worries and dreams flow through our very bodies. Take a moment, if you can, to close your eyes or perhaps settle your gaze somewhere in the space where you are to, if you're able, bring shoulders down or palms upward. Take note of your body in this space. And as you move into a quieter time, a stillness seeking, note where there is ease in your body, strength, maybe warmth. Where is there beauty? A story that your body holds that you cherish. Offer affirmations as you notice these places in your body, the stories that are carried within each cell. Take a moment to find where strength resides in your body and how it shapes the story of who you are. And now from this blessing, turn within your body to note where there is burden or pain, maybe where you have had hard judgments. Where is there a story that needs healing in your body? Bring now your attention to these places. What new story could be fashioned? What new love, what affirmation of this vessel? movement of hands, tone of skin, shape. How can you reclaim the gift of your body? How this body endures, yearns, aches, hungers, these signals to holy needs and eternal struggle. These glimpses into finite life and enduring love. Here now, beloved, take one final moment to notice, to praise, to celebrate what it means to be human in your body. You are one with this vessel. It is good. You are good. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
Good morning, Beacon. My name is Diana Kaiser, and I'm a member of Beacon as well as on the Summit Interfaith Council's Anti-Racism Committee, or ARC, which is the beneficiary of our offering this morning. ARC is a group of 14 standing members from the various houses of worship in Summit. We meet monthly to plan activities and programs that will increase awareness of racial bias and inequity, both historically and in the present day. Our goal is to create an anti-racist community here in Summit and the surrounding towns. Our flagship program is called Dialogue Circles on Race 1.0 and 2.0. We run these programs 2 to 3 times a year. Participants meet once a week for 5 weeks to learn about the history of racism and white supremacy, how to discuss race and confront racist thought, and start their journey to becoming an anti-racist. Our next sessions start in March, so we encourage you to sign up. ARC also sponsors book clubs, speakers, and panel discussions. We have held discussions of books from How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi to Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower. We've hosted Dr. Khalil Muhammad from Harvard and moderated a panel of Summit Common Council candidates. We've also hosted racial equity training for Summit community leaders. Another program ARC runs is called STAR, or Strong Teens Against Racism. STAR seeks to inspire individuals to catalog social change by challenging injustice and inequity when they arise in interactions, institutions, and within themselves. Through personal testimony, small group dialogue, and experiential activities, teens learn to better understand themselves and their racial identity, recognize bias and racism, develop empathy for the experiences of others from diverse backgrounds, and gain the tools with which to challenge bias and racism in their lives. Race and racism continue to be at the forefront of our national dialogue, and our youth are confronting racism and bias more and more frequently. The STAR Conversation Circle on Race provides a safe space to talk productively about it all. Beacon teens have participated in STAR. Elise Nielsen and Stella Demizio come to mind, and hopefully several Beacon teens went to the STAR open house last Sunday. So thank you for listening. Your donations today will go directly to the Summit Interfaith Council Anti-Racism Committee, which will help us to continue fighting racism and white supremacy in our surrounding area. Our offering today will be gratefully received. Thank you.
Thank you to Diana Kaiser for telling us more about the Anti-Racism Committee. I am so thankful for their work here in Summit. I have really seen how the Anti-Racism Committee's work has changed Summit, and I look forward to co-facilitating dialogue circles this March. I wonder, beloved, thinking back to Dr. Tooley's story, who do you most identify with in the story around Maya's family? Do you identify more with Paula, the parent who's uncomfortable talking about sex? Or Shanice, the parent inviting the family to exercise their spiritual muscle, which includes talking about sex? I am most definitely Paula. In fact, the staff have a good laugh about it, and they laughed heartily when they heard that I was going to lead Sex Sunday. Recently, a friend recommended the TV series Outlander due to its great historical setting in 18th century Scotland. And I thought my history-loving teenager would love it. And that is how a mother and a daughter found themselves quite suddenly watching a fairly gratuitous sex scene. Not unlike the heroine in the series who is transported back in time from 1948 to 1746, I found myself suddenly transported back in time to my 13-year-old self, watching a movie with my parents and grandparents in our living room. It was a great movie, and we were laughing throughout it until sex entered the frame. And suddenly I was crossing a threshold that I had not been prepared to cross. Wait, do my grandparents know that I know about sex? Are they watching my response? How should I be reacting? I felt a sudden, desperate desire to leave the room. Be cool, Emily, be cool. Just look at the screen until the scene is over, wait 5 minutes, and then exit stage left, which is exactly what I did. Fast forward some 33 years later, now the tables were turned. I am now the parent in the room, and here is my teenager. And my strategy hasn't changed at all. Be cool, Emily, be cool. Exit, stage left. So friends, I get Paula and her discomfort. And luckily for me, this community right here at Beacon is my Shanice, gently inviting me to risk my own discomfort in order to grow. And growth is necessary because gratuitous sex scenes on television are probably the least of my concerns. When it comes to sex, there are so many layers that we've got to peel back. That's why Sex Sunday is an annual event and Our Whole Lives is a regular program here at Beacon, because we need regular invitations into discomfort and liberation. And I want something different for my daughters, and not just for my daughters, for all of our children. And not just for our children, but for all of us. I want liberation. Liberation from the sex shame that has been handed down to us generation after generation. Liberation so that we may be whole. That's what Shanice invites Paula into, wholeness. Engage your discomfort so that you may have wholeness. Mother and journalist Peggy Orenstein says that the invitation into conversations around sex are rare. She interviewed over 70 young women for her book, Girls and Sex, Navigating the Complicated New Landscape. The female-identified subjects were between the ages of 15 and 20, an age span during which most will become sexually active. She worried at first that few of the girls would discuss sex openly with her, that most of them would be like my 13-year-old self, looking for the nearest escape hatch. They were not just eager, she said, they were hungry to talk. No adult had ever before inquired about their experience of sexuality, what they did, why they did it, how it felt, what they hoped for, what they regretted, and what was fun. What was remarkable about these conversations was how it led to liberation. Orenstein's interviewees stayed in touch with her long after that conversation ended. sharing with her how that single conversation liberated them to act differently. Because of our conversation, they wrote to her, I have changed. Whenever I am seeking liberation and wholeness, my go-to are Black and queer wise ones, because they've done the work. In order to affirm their very identities, in order to love themselves in a society that is seeking to destroy them, they've had to do their work. And their voices awaken my own spiritual liberation. In addition to Outlander, I have been listening to the radio podcast, typically on WNYC, The Takeaways special project, Black Queer Rising. Hosted by Melissa Harris Perry, a Shanice if ever there was one, Harris Perry grew up in Unitarian Universalist congregations where she could exercise those spiritual muscles. In honor of Black History Month, she and her team are highlighting the voices and experiences of Black, queer people's influence and impact on American culture and society. With each episode, I discover a new Shanice who invites me to shift away from shame and encourages me to find my own power. In January, Melissa Harris Perry interviewed the Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis, a Black American, a mother, and a minister, who in this case is heterosexual. Reverend Lewis led us into her own story around sex and shame in her book, Fierce Love. At one point, she shares a healing sexual experience with a man after years of pain. And she writes to all of us, if you're thinking, what kind of preacher is this lady? I don't blame you. When I read that line, I laughed because she couldn't help but voice her own inner critic. What are they going to be thinking of me as a preacher talking about this? Nevertheless, she responds to that inner voice, I'm telling the truth on myself. What stopped me in my tracks was Reverend Lewis's story about her parents. Her parents are loving parents, yet they are also far from perfect. In fact, their actions and their inactions on multiple occasions hurt her deeply, becoming bricks, as she calls them, that weigh her down, no matter how okay she pretends to be. In order for Jackie to find wholeness, she had to talk to her parents. She says, even today, as I write this, just remembering the feeling of having to tell the adults, people tasked with raising me, that they had not given me what I needed makes me hurt all over again. But I did it. I dug in. One story Jackie shared with her parents was the experience of a friend of the family who had crossed her boundaries sexually over many years. When she told her parents, they were surprised and they believed her. It didn't stop the feelings from being complicated, embarrassed, upset, disappointed, angry. They also didn't know what to do. It got awkward. Yet her parents remained in the conversation, and it wasn't just one conversation. They spoke about it again and again, speaking to the truth, getting stuck, trying to make sense of it, desperate to keep their masks of perfection on, and then daring to take them off again and again, coming back to it. And because her parents remained steadfast, they helped Jackie, their daughter, and they helped Reverend Jackie, a minister, embody sexual healing and wholeness. Not all parents offer this invitation to their children, an invitation to unearth shame, to share complicated feelings, to risk conflict in order to be whole, to face blame in order to make room for forgiveness and reconciliation. Not all parents do that, but that's the type of parent I want to be. That's the type of minister I want to be. That's the type of community I want to be a part of. And if I want that, if we want that, then we have to be willing to risk discomfort in order to keep that promise, in order to issue an invitation. Come, talk to me. It's probably true that neither our teenagers nor our grandparents want to watch Outlander with us. That's okay. But they will know that when it comes to sex, Whether we're more like Paula or Shanice, we are willing to face our discomfort. We are willing to flex our muscles, and we will lean into liberation. So may it be.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our home days glad.
People, it's Sex Sunday, my favorite Sunday of the year. I'm going to explore the where, the why, and the how. About 10 years ago, or it might have been a dozen, one tends to lose count, a religious educator, a DRE from another UU congregation, asked for my opinion and input about a 5th grade Our Whole Lives class that had in it a kid who was being raised in a polyamorous family. For those of you who heard Rev Emilie and Rev Robin reference it, Our Whole Lives is a comprehensive values-based sexuality education program developed by 2 religious groups, the Unitarian Universalist Association and the United Church of Christ, and yet it's completely secular in nature. Anyway, so I said to the DRE, what's the problem? Kids come from all kinds of families, right? Some might not even have a family. The DRE sputtered her resistance and began using words like weird, not normal, and just wrong. It took all of my will to not knock the DRE flat. I took a deep breath and called forth my practices of attentive listening. And I began asking questions as, what if one of the parents was transgender or gay? Would that make you uncomfortable? My enculturation into Unitarian Universalism had taught me to hope that the invitation to a deeper conversation might shift a perspective. And so we continued talking, but it is my understanding that sadly the child was not allowed to participate. I wasn't born being comfortable talking about sexuality. How did I get here? This is the where piece, the naming of the place that frames the narrative, the blueprint, if you will. I was fortunate to have parents who did not censor literature or history, cinema, music, or the arts. From the ancient temples of Khajuraho, which depict explicit sexual acts, to Diana Ross's I'm Coming Out, from Lolita to Donna Summers, from the eroticism and gender fluidity that is woven throughout Indian music and dance, not to mention Bollywood, nothing was off limits. And so, not only did we have a great ease with abundant references to sexuality, we also questioned patriarchal portrayals of women, and the power imbalance that was so obvious in many relationships. The human body was viewed as glorious and normal, and we were not victims of sexual abuse. The oppression of being silent about sexuality was not present in my family of origin. I know I am very fortunate. And 17 years ago, when I found myself at an in-person training to become an Our Whole Lives or OWL trainer, my comfort and ease with the topic increased. I was there with other Beacon members, me with all my years of colonized education, ready and armed with skepticism, doubt, my both arms crossed and a prove it to me attitude. Reverend Robin has spoken of something similar. What I was unprepared for was how this program amazingly, totally, and completely centered the voices of young people. Yes, we had a curriculum and content and information that needed to be communicated, but the understanding of it could change depending on what young people brought into the room. In over 20 years of running around schools, I had never encountered something like this. And so I was called, despite my own internal wranglings, to publicly declare myself a Unitarian Universalist, even though I'd been running around UU congregations for about 16 years at that point. And even though I continue to this day grapple with the foundational influence of faith in my life. Today, I am most at ease with the practices and theory of Buddhism. But I am a Unitarian Universalist because of sexuality education. So far, everything seems to line up in pretty whole and healthy ways, right? My family of origin, my training, my professional work, all sets me up to be comfortable with talking about topics that might scare others. And yet, here is the piece that is hard to tease out. This is the why part. While I know and understand that sexuality is much more than sexual intercourse, it is about body image, self-esteem, friendships, intimacy, whom we choose to love, how we see ourselves within and beyond gender binaries, how we consent to love and loving. It is an exploration of what makes us who we are. There is a deeper why, which is my current journey. For a person from India, I am relatively light-skinned, by quite a few shades, in fact. Certainly the most light-skinned of a pack of cousins, I was made much of, not overtly by my parents, but by the culture I grew up in. I drew stares on the street. I knew I had a leg up, power and access, not just because of education, money, class, and background, but because I was light-skinned. On another day, we'll unpack rank, power, and status. What has been hard to tease out, uncomfortable in fact, is the intersectionality of skin color and sexuality. We know this in our heads, we hear the terms intersectionality, but do we really get it in our hearts? Can we push the comfort and therefore separate notions of race and sexuality so that the container of our experiences and understanding is larger to make room for the discomfort so that the uncomfortable becomes comfortable, not complacent, but comfortable? To understand that sexuality education can be a vehicle for anti-racism work, even as we contend with our personal discomfort, like watching sex scenes, as Rev Emilie talked about, with our teenagers. Are there also deeper discomforts that we ought to be contending with? It's been over 50 years, my friends, since desegregation, and yet segregation persists. As SIECUS, that is the Sexuality, Information, and Education Council of the United States, if you're not familiar, you should look it up. I hope it's going to go in the chat soon. As SIECUS points out, predominantly non-white school districts receive $23 million less in funding than white districts with the same number of students. We know that when funding falls short, schools lack the resources to provide comprehensive sex education. Our anatomy, physiology, posters, and models are in shades and colors that a person of the global majority is not likely to see themselves as. You should come talk to me and Jermaine about how hard it was to find alternative models and posters. How can we say to our kids, this is what you look like? Again, from SIECUS. Black students nationwide are far more likely than white students to receive abstinence-only instruction. We need to affirm the right to bodily autonomy and make sure Black youth have access to the information and services needed to ensure their health and well-being. Sexuality education is critical for creating safer school, congregation, and family environments. Black, queer, transgender youth are subject to discrimination, and gender non-conforming girls are more likely to be punished and seen as aggressors. These disputes are often escalated to the juvenile justice system, where racial disparities have been long and well documented. Any expression outside of cis and heteronormativity is a subject of ridicule, rejection, and official reporting. And finally, here is the how part. Brian Stevenson, in his work, counsels us to get proximate to create justice. Can you get proximate with sexuality education? Take an hour class. Go for our whole lives training. Talk to me first, please. Change your words. Try saying supplies for menstruation instead of feminine hygiene. Read the poetry and inspirational writings of Black, Indigenous, people of color of the global majority. Set down your Mary Olivers and Billy Collins. Open yourself to another world that we are only beginning to acknowledge even exists. So if you are a lawyer, a doctor, a retired scientist, a teacher, a stay-at-home parent or guardian, if you are a nurse, a teacher, a leader, or a spouse, look within and ask yourself, what's my blueprint? The place where I come from. What structures of oppression are built into my very being, and how am I complicit in perpetuating them? How can I alter them and stretch the walls of comfort to include discomfort on the journey towards liberation? Audre Lorde reminds us, for we have built into all of us old blueprints of expectations and response, old structures of oppression, and these must be altered at the same time as we alter the living conditions which are a result of those structures. And then, whatever you are doing, wherever you are on the journey towards liberation, know that it can be a vehicle for dismantling systems of oppression. And if you're already engaged in the work, don't get complacent. There are new beginnings of pushing the bounds of comfort every day. Let's begin with sexuality education. Amen.
The end of our service is the benediction, which from the Latin roots means to speak well of or to bless. So here is a musical blessing for you and for all of us. It has some phrases that you can echo back and others that we sing together. And the words are inspired by the loving kindness meditation. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be lifted up in joy. May you find peace and be at ease. And may we blessed be. May you be safe. May you be well. May you be lifted up in joy. May you find peace and be at ease. And may you blessed be. May we be safe. May we be well. May we be lifted up in joy. May we find peace and be at ease. And may we blessed be. Amen.